All right, we are back, and the NHL preseason has started as well as training camp. They've been in training camp for about a week now, as well as a few preseason games are under a bunch of teams' belts. And specifically for the Winnipeg Jets and their training camp, the one big storyline, or one of two big storylines going into this training camp, was when was Cole Perfetti going to be signed, which as of the making of this video, he is now signed to a 2-year deal, which very quickly, I'll just say, very good deal. I really like it. And the second one was actually talked about in the offseason, and Kevin Cheveldayoff specifically said that there will be opportunities for younger players on the Jets lineup, or in the Jets organization, I should say, to be able to earn spots for the main roster this upcoming season. And that's definitely been a storyline throughout camp. It was brought up to a bunch of the young guys at rookie showcases as well as first day of training camp. We saw a guy like Brad Lambert put on a bunch of muscle this offseason in preparation to make the main roster, hopefully. And so far through the first couple of preseason games for the Jets, the young guys have had an opportunity to really thrive and succeed and be able to prove themselves that they can be NHL main roster material. So with that in mind, and with the idea of 1 or 2 roster spots potentially being available for young guys coming out of training camp, I want to look at specifically the Winnipeg Jets forward group, as I feel there are more possibilities for young guys to get into this lineup there than there are at defense. And especially because I see one glaring hole in the Jets forward group that a young guy can swoop in and take. So in today's video, we're going to look at 5 Winnipeg Jets forward prospects, as well as look at the potential starting lineup for the Winnipeg Jets and figure out which of these 5 guys has the best chance at making the Winnipeg Jets opening night rosters. We'll take a look at that in a little bit more in this video, so without further ado, let's get into it. Before we get started with the rest of the video, however, I'd just like to remind you guys to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new around here. Leaving likes on these videos really helps them perform better in the YouTube algorithm, helps this channel grow. So if you want to see this channel grow, again, make sure to leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss another video. So let's start by looking at the Winnipeg Jets forward group as of last season, or the last game that they played. This is courtesy of Daily Faceoff, but just quickly looking at it, the first line pretty much intact of Connor Scheifele and Velarde, despite the underlying numbers possibly not being great. Second line of Nikolai Ehlers, Vladislav Namestnikov, and Cole Perfetti, and we'll get back to that line. Third line of Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton, which I think actually worked really well throughout the regular season and during the playoffs. Maybe a guy like Mason Appleton could potentially see himself lower in the lineup at some point this year, but for the most part, I think that third line's intact. And the fourth line is always a toss-up, so they have Morgan Barron, Alex Iafallo, and David Gustafsson on that fourth line, so odds are that fourth line will probably stay the same unless someone really proves themselves in camp. But out of this forward group, the one glaring hole that I see with this forward group is second line center, or just the need for another top 6 forward, because Vladislav Namestnikov is great. He's found a home in Winnipeg and he's played really well for the Jets. He earned a new contract for himself and all that. However, I don't really know if he's best suited to be a second line forward. Maybe he can be in a pinch, but I don't think he's a full-time top 6 forward in the NHL. I think he's better suited to be potentially on the third line, possibly moving down Mason Appleton, and then Appleton bumps one of those guys that are on the fourth line currently out of a spot there. But I just don't think Namestnikov is best suited to be in that top 6, and a second line center at that. This team has struggled to have a second line center properly for their entire existence in Winnipeg, at least. The one kind of solution we had was Paul Stastny for a little while, but other than that, it's been relatively a mixed bag there. So I'm not totally sure if I'm totally confident in having Namestnikov in that roster spot. I'd like to see him more on the third line. But with that, that means there should be a top 6 forward position, in my eyes, available for one of these 5 players. So let's get into that. We're going to start with the guy who I think is the top choice for majority of Jets fans and who I at least think is their most promising prospect, that being Brad Lambert, which I don't really think I need to go too in depth about his play style and what he's done, but just very quickly, this guy played very well in the AHL last year, putting up 55 points in 64 games, did end up playing one game with the Jets last year, putting up an assist. Before that, lit up the WHL with the Seattle Thunderbirds, which was kind of a super team that year in the first place, but 38 points in 26 games, and then in the playoffs, he put up 26 points in 17 games. This guy, we kind of know what he's about. He's a speedy, very highly skilled forward here that at least before training camp started or before this past season, we were kind of thinking he would be a smaller, lightweight type of player, and maybe he would struggle to play center. This offseason, he's put on reportedly 15 pounds of muscle. So whether or not you choose to believe that is up to you. But the fact that he's put the work in to have a bigger body and be more NHL ready physically is a great thing to see out of one of your prospects, especially when there's a potential roster spot in the balance. But for Brad Lambert, it's been widely regarded that he was a steal at the 30th overall pick. Not really during the draft, but since he was drafted at that spot, it's been proven that he should have gone higher in that draft, and he's going to be a very solid impact player for the Winnipeg Jets whenever he makes the NHL. Maybe it's this year. And in fact, during line rushes today at training camp for the Jets, they actually ran a line of Perfetti, Ehlers, and Brad Lambert in between those two players. So it seems like Lambert is being positioned as the favorite to get a roster spot out of training camp here. He is the most likely guy out of these five to earn that spot. Time will tell on if he will able to keep that spot and if he's going to be able to maintain it. We'll have to see throughout the rest of training camp and preseason, but so far, so good. He's looked pretty good in the one game that he did play against the Minnesota Wild. Now let's talk about the other guy who played an NHL game for the Jets this year, or this past season, I should say, that being Nikita Chibrikov. He was the 50th overall pick back in 2021 for the Winnipeg Jets, and last season with the Manitoba Moose, after struggling in the KHL and not really getting a lot of playing time, he put up 17 goals, 30 assists, 47 points in 70 games, and then played one game with the big club, scored in his NHL debut. So that's a very good thing to see. This is another guy that's speedy, skilled, but kind of similar to Brad Lambert, is a bit undersized. He's 5'10", 172 pounds according to Elite Prospects. So he is going to struggle a bit physically unless he's able to put on some weight. And even then, this is a guy who's probably not going to succeed too well in a bottom six role. You probably have to put him in a scoring position if he's going to make the opening night roster. I think he could probably benefit from being in the AHL this year, but being the guy for the Moose. And then if there's an injury to a scoring forward or someone in the middle six, maybe you call up Chibrikov and give him an opportunity at that point. But I think he's probably the second most likely guy to get a spot here. Moving on, let's talk about Colby Barlow, the other pure winger that we're going to look at here. The former 18th overall pick back in 2023 for the Jets, coming off of a season with the Owen Sound Attack where he put up 40 goals in 50 games, 58 points overall. So probably not as good of a season as he would have liked to have in the OHL, but the fact he scored 40 goals in 50 games says this guy likes to shoot the puck, and he's a really good finisher, something that the Jets could probably use in the rest of their lineup. And on top of that, he's a bigger, more physical presence out of all the guys that we're going to talk about in this video. So he could play up and down the lineup and really adjust his play style to where he is and what kind of role he's given, which I think benefits him going forward in terms of his likelihood to make the team, maybe not out of this year's camp, but maybe next year's training camp, or maybe getting a look sometime this season in the Jets forward group. Moving on to another 18th overall pick. This time we're talking about Chaz Lucius, the 18th overall pick back in 2021. He is a center, can also play the wing, but a decently sized center at 6'1". Another guy who's been able to put the puck in the net quite well throughout his career. The only problem is that this guy cannot stay healthy. Only played 17 games with the Moose last year, put up 13 points in those 17 games, but then got injured, missed a lot of time. The year before that, played 6 games with the Portland Winterhawks in the WHL, 5 goals, 10 assists, 15 points, but got injured, missed the rest of that season. Played 24 games with the University of Minnesota back in 2021-22, put up 19 points in those 24 games. I believe he also missed time there. So this guy, post his draft year, has just been unable to stay healthy. And just because of that, your best ability is your availability. And until he's able to figure that out, I don't know if he gets a really good look at the NHL roster. If he's able to stay healthy and he gets one full pro season with the Manitoba Moose under his belt, then I could absolutely see him getting all the opportunity in the world next year to make the opening night roster for the Jets. But for right now, I think he needs to focus on, let's play a full pro season at the AHL level first with no injuries, and then we'll worry about making the NHL. And now finally, let's talk about the most recently acquired prospect for the Jets, that being Brayden Yager, coming over from Pittsburgh in the Rutger McGroarty trade, a trade of 14th overall picks. This guy was drafted a year after Rutger McGroarty. He was drafted in 2023. And after a draft year that was pretty good, 78 points in 67 games, and it was able to get him in the first round of the draft. In his draft plus 1 year, 95 points in 57 games. In the playoffs in the WHL for the Moose Jaw Warriors, put up 27 points in 20 games, and then was a point per game for Canada at the World Juniors this past year. So once again, another really good finisher, really good shooter, and something that the Jets need. The one thing holding him back is that he still has junior eligibility. He has another year that he could play in the WHL, and I think he could probably benefit from just using that and just being patient with this guy. There's no need to rush him. You can let him have another year in the WHL, absolutely light it up, and then next camp, maybe he gets an opportunity if there are more spots available for any prospects for the Jets to make the opening night roster. But I say right now, it's okay to be patient with him. No need to rush him. Just let him play another year in the WHL. And plus, he is a pure center, does not play the wing, so he's going to fill a need later down the line of potentially being a really good second line center at the NHL level, if not a really good third line center. But for now, just be patient with him. Let him play in the WHL for a season, and it'll be okay. So we've gone through the 5 prospects very quickly after looking at the opening night roster. So now the question is, which of these 5 guys has the highest chance of making the opening night roster, if it even happens for any of these 5 guys? And I think I kind of spoiled it at the beginning with talking about Brad Lambert, and especially with him being in line rushes on the second line today. Even after Cole Perfetti got signed, the fact that he's potentially going to be on a second line with Ehlers and Perfetti, or at least getting looks there, tells me it's his spot to lose. I think he's most likely of these 5 guys to make the opening night roster. In fact, I'm going to say I think he's going to make it. He played very well in his one preseason game so far, where he was playing with, I believe it was Velarde and Iafallo, if I'm not mistaken. And plus, he's put in the work to be more physically ready for NHL competition, and he's able to play center. He played center in the AHL, played center pretty much everywhere he went, but it's his spot to lose. I don't think there's really any other guy that's really going to challenge him, strictly because Chabrikov could probably benefit from being the guy in the AHL for a season. Barlow, although I think he's more physically ready than anyone else on this roster, and he can play up and down the lineup, I just think he could probably benefit from a year of pro hockey at the AHL level if he's not eligible for the OHL. Once again, this is a guy that you don't need to rush to the NHL level, and I think Cheveldayoff knows that. And then Brayden Yager, same thing. You can be patient with him. He has another year of CHL eligibility. Just use that while you can. And then Chaz Lucius, he's just injury prone. He needs to play a full season of hockey at the pro level first before you can even consider him to make the opening night roster for the Jets. So with all that being considered, I think Brad Lambert is the most likely guy. I think it's his spot to lose, and I'm going to say I think he's going to make the opening night roster. He's going to be on that second line with Ehlers and Perfetti, and we'll see how it goes from there. But let me know in the comment section below, who do you think of these 5 guys is most likely to make the roster, and when do you think these guys may get an opportunity to make the Jets roster? Do you think they'll get opportunities during the season? Do you think it'll be next training camp? And if Brad Lambert makes the team, where do you think he's going to slot into this team, and what kind of impact will he have on the roster? Let me know in the comment section below. But for now, that is it for this video. I did hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.